Happy Monday morning, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful weekend and you were able to be in God's house and worship Jesus Christ Sunday. If you missed church, go to our church website and watch the live stream video or the pre-recorded sermon. Either one, they're all there, and that way you can at least have some worship experience. But also hope you're looking forward to next Sunday morning and being in God's house. Well, today we start in the book of Ruth. That's where we'll be for 4 days. Today, chapter 1 of Ruth, and this story took place during the time of the judges that we read a few weeks ago. And while the book focuses on the woman named Ruth and how God worked in her life and through her to care for her, chapter 1, what really spoke to me was the attitude of her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi and her husband during a famine, and you'll remember during the times of the judges, there were good times and bad times. And things would get rough, and God would raise up a judge to deliver them, and things would get better. Then the people would forget about God's sin, and things would get rough again. Well, during one of those rough times, we learned in Ruth chapter 1, there was a severe famine. So Naomi and her husband, with their 2 sons, moved to the country of Moab, live among the Moabites. And while there, their 2 sons marry Moabite women. Well, in time, Naomi's husband dies, and then her 2 sons die, leaving just her as a widow and her 2 daughters-in-law. She hears that things are better back in Bethlehem in Judea where they came from, and so she decides to go back there. And she tells her 2 daughter-in-laws to return to their family. One of them does, but Ruth, the other daughter-in-law, does not. Commits to be with Naomi the rest of her life. And so Ruth, the daughter-in-law, and Naomi, the mother-in-law, they move back to Bethlehem in Judea. So that's the story in chapter 1. Now, Naomi, this wife, this widow, the mother-in-law, her attitude is not really good. I mean, she makes a practical decision in moving back home, but her attitude is not one of faith and love and trust in God. Look at what it tells us in verse 13. She's talking to her daughters-in-law and encouraging them to go back to their families. And at the end of that, she says, "For it is harder for me than for you, for the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me." Her husband's death, the death of her 2 sons, God is against me. Well, she and Ruth make their way to Bethlehem in Judea, and the people see her, and they remember her because she's only been gone 10 years and has friends, maybe even relatives there, and they start talking to her, and, "Hey, it's Naomi." And notice her response in verse 20. She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Myra," which means bitter. "For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." She says in verse 21, "I went out full." I was blessed. I had a lot. My husband, my 2 sons. "But the Lord has brought me back empty. I don't have my husband. I don't have my 2 sons. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has witnessed against me and the Almighty has afflicted me?" She was blaming God for what had happened, for all of her tragedy. And it was tragic. I mean, it's a tragic story. In a 10-year period, she loses her husband. Well, in a 10-year period, she has to leave her home where she's been all of her life because of famine and hardship. And then she loses her husband, and she loses her 2 sons, and she has to move back home as a widow. That's tragic. It's a hard story. And she's bitter. And in fact, in verse 15, when she's encouraging her daughters-in-law to return to their family, and one does, and Ruth is saying she doesn't want to, in verse 15, she said, "Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods." It didn't bother Ruth that this other daughter-in-law had not only gone back to her birth family, but returned to the pagan religion of her birth family. life can make us, if we allow it, make us bitter. It's obvious that with Ruth, rather with Naomi, that happened. And that faith was not a strong part of her life. And I think a question that all of us need to ask ourselves is this: is our faith based on our circumstances, or is our faith in the person of Jesus Christ irregardless of circumstances? See, if your faith is dependent on circumstances, you won't be faithful to God through the hard times. If your faith is dependent on circumstances, you're probably not going to do anything great for God, because you will encounter challenges and hardships when you obey God. Faith that depends on a happy life, no problems, a good life on circumstances, is really not faith. Because faith is not in circumstances. It's in the person of our Lord, the person of God, the person of Jesus Christ. Now, there are questions we can't answer. Things happen and we don't always understand why. But those don't defeat real faith. The presence of faith or the absence of faith that is real determines how we respond to the events in our lives. If circumstances and events make your faith, they can take it away. And it's not really faith. You must get to the place, brothers and sisters, where your faith is in the person of Jesus, not the blessings of Jesus. What is your faith dependent on? Hard times reveal the presence of real faith or its absence. What is life revealing about you? And how strong is your faith in the person of Jesus Christ? Something really important for all of us to think about, and pray about, and get stronger in. I'll see you tomorrow as we look at